happened. You have an offsides on a field goal that led to extending the drive that led to points. Prior to that, you had an interception that was overturned because of pass interference. And then before the half, you had 2 pass interference penalties that basically led to a touchdown right before the half with about, inside a minute left. So I think when you just look at that, you're just putting yourself so far behind, and having nothing to do with what your opponent is doing. And it was out of character for the team, and it certainly hurt them.
Well, let me speak for the Chiefs fans very quickly because I can hear them from the middle of America right now. In some eyes, some of those penalties, Tim, were ticky-tack, especially that one holding call that negated a turnover where Matthew had intercepted Tom Brady off of that pick pass. There was another one that was somewhat questionable. Did you think the refs maybe weren't letting the boys play, so to speak, in this game early?
Well, it's interesting because you go back to, championship weekend and even the divisional round, there was a lot of talk about the officials, quote, letting guys play. I think you've got to officiate consistently, through the regular season, into the postseason and the Super Bowl. I don't think you change the rules. Look, you could make an argument that things were called less throughout times in the playoffs than they were tonight. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. But I would say that I do think that some of the penalties were standard with how they would call things during the season. You mentioned the interception from Tyrann Mathieu that was negated because of pass interference. You maybe have the ability to say, look, that was contact after the ball was tipped. Look, you may have a case there. It's hard for the official to decipher that. You look at the pass interference on Mike Evans before the end of the first half, where Breeland's feet get tangled up with Mike Evans, and then as he trips, kind of the rest of his body makes contact with Evans. The official throws a flag. Look, I can't say that I loved either one of those calls. At the same time, you do have to understand what the official is looking at. And so, okay, the saying is, do business as business is being done, Michael.
Yeah.
And if they're calling those, pass interference, then you got to take your hands off of them. And I think, they weren't able to do that.
Well, let's take a look at some of the numbers as related to the penalties there, Tim, in the first half. 8-1 would be the discrepancy, in the words of Chiefs fans. 95 yards on those 8 penalties. But it's not just the yardage. It's also the moment they happen and able to keep drives alive where the Bucs were able to score on those drives as opposed to maybe getting off the field in a 4th down situation. But that right there put the Chiefs behind it. But here's the deal. Kansas City being behind in a playoff game or even a Super Bowl is not that big of a deal over the last couple of years. They've overcome those deficits time and time again. But this one, they just couldn't do it. And so now we have to give credit to that Tampa Bay defense. And I made this comment earlier on social media. If you look at the two, I felt as if the Buccaneers defense embarrassed the Chiefs defense because what they did against Patrick Mahomes compared to what the Chiefs did to Tom Brady, night and day. Why was Tampa so effective against Mahomes and company?
Because Kansas City couldn't pass protect. I think on 56, pass, dropbacks, Patrick Mahomes was pressured on 29 of them. I mean, he had no time. They could not pass protect Patrick Mahomes, which is why he didn't look like the Patrick Mahomes that we're used to seeing. Look, his big plays, in the first half were when he scrambled on a 3rd and 7 for a first down or a 3rd and 10 for a first down. They could get nothing going down the field. Tampa Bay did a good job of not giving up the big play, and they were able to get home. They dialed up a few pressures that caught Mahomes off guard. They weren't able to alter the protection to get it picked up. But other than that, it was a lot of, guys up front getting beat, losing their individual matchups. And so I know a lot was made about, offensive linemen being out for Kansas City coming into this game. It had an impact. Plain and simple, it did. They could not pass protect, and that was a problem because they didn't have time to get the ball out and down the field.
By the way, you see the news right there across the bottom of the screen as Tim was talking. Tom Brady was named Super Bowl MVP as expected for a 5th time, 7 championships, 5 Super Bowl MVPs for Tom Brady. Again, that's most all time. It was most before winning his 5th because Joe Montana's 2nd there with 3, just adding to the legacy for Tom Brady as the greatest NFL player of all time. If we can go back to that Chiefs offense, they've been so versatile throughout the year, whether it's Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Edwards-Helaire, like they have all these weapons. But as you mentioned earlier, Tim, some of the things that that Tampa was doing just wasn't allowed that because the pressure was too great. How much credit do you give to Todd Bowles and that defense based on what they saw the first time they played him in Week 12 to make those adjustments necessary, especially in the secondary here in Super Bowl 55?
Well, you have to give them a ton of credit, Michael, because I think that, you go back to that earlier matchup, there was a lot of hay being made, in the passing game on stuff down the field. They gave up big plays. I think it was clear that they were going to play deep in the first half, and say, look, if you're going to complete a pass, it's not going to be over our head. They were able to do that. And listen, part of what you do too is, you put a plan together for the opponent that you're facing. And because of that, they decided to come after Patrick Mahomes with backup offensive linemen, and it was the right plan. And so I think a lot of credit. Look, both coordinators, Leftwich on offense and Todd Bowles on defense, did a tremendous job.
Yeah, what a staff that Bruce Arians had put together there in Tampa, and you bring in a quarterback like Tom Brady, and you get a Super Bowl championship. Number 7 for Brady, 5th MVP. What a performance it was for Tampa Bay. Tim Hasselbeck, appreciate the time. I'm Michael Leaves. Coming up next here on ESPN, more from Super Bowl 55, NFL Prime Time.
Welcome to a special Super Bowl edition of NFL Primetime, presented by Intuit TurboTax Live.
The celebration it is the city of champions, Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers, who just devastated the Kansas City Chiefs, not allowing them in the end zone, not the creamsicle, but the blue splash of Coach Bruce Arians. Tom Brady, Gronk, the old guard that came as the new guard to Tampa against these Chiefs. Antonio Brown, the Buccaneers. They say you can never go home again. Well, it took them 3 road playoff games to get home again. And there's Brady and Mahomes again. The master, still the master. The youngster, still in waiting. My goodness, the 7th Lombardi Trophy won by Tom Brady.